early 90s. And
I see a Fubu. I just started seeing that.
Is a 90, Fubu is a 90, what?
I'm thinking that's new.
No, that's old.
That's old. Vintage. This is a lot more.
What's that one that came?
Yeah.
Remember how it
Yeah.
came?
It's loud. That's right. Facing east, Father left to on the right, Allah, Father of the universe,
Allah, Father of the universe,
Father of love,
Father of love,
truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector,
Allah is my protector,
my guide, and
my
my salvation. By night, and by day, His holy prophet, Islam. I put it somewhere. My phone. I pulled it out, but can't remember where I put it. Yeah. No, I'm good for now. I'll start with our letters to be read every meeting. Prophet warns all Muslims, governors ordered to read proclamation at each meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical, agitating speeches while at work in their homes or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive the reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet, noble Drew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Noble Drew Ali. To be proclaimed at every meeting. Islam. I am glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim that it was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I am calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet Noble Drew Ali. To the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Islam. This is the instruction from your Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you would be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is now on, but the weak can comprehend it not. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I, Noble Drew Ali. And that's why many hearts have been turned to stone. Many have eyes to see but cannot see, ears to hear but cannot hear, lest they will be confounded of their sins. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving, and they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid. and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but would sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah would bless you for your good work. Peace, your divine prophet, Noble Drew Ali. Oh yeah, there's smoothies, $5.
Oh yeah, there's smoothies. It's $5. It's, mango, kale, pineapple. Some of them are black cherry, beet, mango. $5.
There's a couple different, I think there's one or two different from last time. Peace, Morris. Islam. It's all good. Before we go on, I wondered if Rennie could just talk about last week with the solstice event, where where you took away from it, and you go from there.
What I took from that solstice last week. And I want to give thanks and honors to the ones that came out, like maybe Shrek, Islam.
Did you take that? It was great to be 5 minutes away from home. Just wanted to make sure that it took us an hour. It took me an hour and a half, 2 hours to get home. So
Yeah, so we were down at the big park in Hamilton, near Hamilton, seriously. The autumn equinox, or the solstice. What I took from that was how the sunset went down and how the moon came up right after the sun. It was all divine. Incidentally, it's self-explanatory. So the sun went down right after. So the sun went down to the west, of course, and then as we looked, Brother Omar said, "Turn around." And as we turned around, it looked like pretty much a full moon that was behind us right after the east. So all divine, and the whole purpose of us being there was to set out our intentions, things that we want to get rid of. So we wrote it on a piece of paper and we put it in a pot, and then we would, burn it after. So each one of us put out the intentions, we all sort of compiled it, put it in the pot, and we burned it. So right just as the sun was going down, we did that. So it was all divine. Just beautiful. It's awesome.
So yeah, that's just some of the activity that we do, so that we have something called our culture, because coming out of whatever school of thought we come out of, there's no real cultural things that we do. Everything is somebody said do that. It's not really our thing, so it's more a thing of claiming our culture for ourselves, so we know what it is. Go ahead, Omar.
just so we know, right? In 2 weeks it's Thanksgiving, right?
Mhm.
And we know Thanksgiving is with the European his ritual for giving thanks for being in our land and having overthrown us. But we also, if I can forgot right, is we also stood in a circle and gave thanks, if you remember. So that was the other part of it, which was in line with what this should be, which is during this period of time, we would give thanks for the crops, and we give thanks for all the harvests that we brought in. So what we did is we also had a sharing circle where we gave thanks and put those intentions out there. So one of the things that we realized is that we have to start doing our culture. If not, then we're going to be doing someone else's culture. Meanwhile, they're doing our culture.
Mhm.
While we're then giving our culture to them and then giving them our energy as well.
Yes, ma'am. Was there any questions before we start up today? Any questions or comments? So doing some cleaning and bumped into the old letters from the Moors who, when we first came into the information, there was some Moors that were incarcerated that used to write different, send them stuff, help them get in contact with whoever or whatever through, because all they got is mail. So I was going through some of them, and some of them are speaking to exactly where we're at right now. And I just thought it would be good to hear others' perspectives who aren't necessarily in the best position, but how are they looking at Moorish Science Temple, Moorish movement, Noble Drew Ali, being that they're in these crypts, as they call them. So this one is October 2008. Islam Grand Sheikh, I pray this missive finds you and the rest of the royal family of Moorish Muslims in Canada in the best health and spirit. I received your holy scroll along with the articles covering your fight against the iron hand of oppression of the Roman canon, Canadian Rome, by which our people are suffering. Moab, the entire measure, is a clear reflection of the prophecy of the Holy One Prophet Noble Drew Ali, who taught us that woman was synonymous with humanity, and that to uplift humanity, one would have to uplift the woman. This is why on the front of our questionnaire, the prophet is depicted as the savior of humanity, and he is showing holding a defenseless woman who has humanity written across her body. Today we find our women and sisters being abused by the devils and satans of the earth, who are the masters of deceiving the masses into accepting their destructive ways. The people glamorize the pimping and sexual exploitation of our women on television and through music, which are the tools they use to mold our daughters into whores and our sons into pimps. And the fact that the Moors in Canada are seen in the media defending humanity with the divine principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice sends a holy vibration throughout the universe, from the center to the outer bounds of life. It is a blessing to see you and the Moors in Moorish attire, standing as a wall of brass in defense of the Prophet and the temple. In all my years of assisting brothers in this holy and divine movement, I have never felt more proud of my brothermen. Many individuals learn the lessons for their own selfish gain and hardly ever take on the fight for the people. So I extend the highest honors to you Moors for imitating the Prophet in actions, word, and deeds. I am a bit concerned that some may interpret your opinions regarding Freemasonry as radical and in some ways dangerous. As a Moorish American Muslim, especially one in a position of leadership, we must be careful how we speak so that there is no confusion. Remember the Divine Constitution and Bylaws Act 5. This organization of the Moorish Science Temple of America is not to cause any confusion. Additional Act 4. All members, while making a public speech, must not use assertion against the American flag or any member of any organized group. because we are to teach love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, nay, correction, or speak radical against the church or any member or any organized group. Draw as a mastermind and know what to expect of your foes, and the tacit they'll use to disrupt the rising of your temple. They will tell all sorts of lies and will have government agents posing as Asiatics, seekers of light, join your temple to watch you and plant dark seeds in the hearts of the multitude to lead them astray. I believe their first action against your multitude will be to call into question your authority as Grand Sheikh of the MST of A and your leadership in the U.S. through which you received the charter to function as a temple. The Masons will contact the grand body of the MSTA and ask them, are you a Sheikh of the MSTA? And do they support your standing against them? These brothers, most speaking ill of one another and their members, are being taught how to hate Moors and their Moorish leaders. This isn't what Prophet Noble Drew Ali taught of his Moors, and there is no salvation in what these brothers are teaching. My brother instructed me to address my letters to one of the sisters, which I did not get any response. In chapter 34, verse 2 of our Quran, we read, "The tongue of the sincere is rooted in heart. Hypocrisy and deceit have no place in his words." And in verse 6, it states, "The words of his mouth are the thoughts of his heart." Verse 8, "And whoever he promised shall surely be performed." But in chapter 41, verse 11, we are warned not to suspect evil in anyone until we see it. And when we see it, we are to not forget it. And with that being said, I still hold fast to my peace and regard for these brothers, because I do not get caught up in the follies of man. If you are with a particular leadership and they are teaching hatred, it would be hard for you to defend your standing in the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And Rome will use the hate teaching to place the mark of death on your temple and to misrepresent the prophet and the temple. And before the leadership in North America allows that, they will denounce you as an official Moorish leader. However, as your brother man and true friend, I will not allow that to happen. We will be victorious, but it will be done in a conflict that cannot be told in words. But you must be willing to follow exactly what is instructed of you by the Prophet and Allah. I ask you this: if all the temples in the U.S. are teaching against other temples, which temple can be right and in line with the teachings of Noble Drew Ali? How do we take back the temples without being hateful toward one another? The only way we can protect the Prophet and the temple is to enact the Royal Council of the Brotherhood. Continue to carry the torch of Islamism to the rest of the world, and know that you and I are brothermen, and I will stand with you all in times of adversity. Be a wise leader and be mindful of the forces of evil clothed in the form of man, because they are going to and fro throughout the earth, seeking whom they may devour. I extend highest honors to you and all the Moors standing in defense of the Prophet and the temple. I bid you peace. Islam. I don't know if any of you had any thoughts from that one. Chicago.
Right all the way here in Canaanland.
Yeah.
It's like we were saying, forget Chicago temple.
Yeah. This one is June 5th, 2009.
One of the other one just
The one before was October 19th, 2008. Islam Sheikh, I pray this missive finds you and the rest of the members there in best health and spirit. All is well with myself and the Moors here. I know that my creations have passed since our last correspondence, but trust that our spirit is one and in direct accord with yourself. For a few months, Rome had us to a different prison as a means of punishment for standing as a wall of brass for one of our members. On January 16, 2009, Rome placed restraints on a Muslim and left him in a cell for 2 days. The brother could not relieve himself or eat and was forced to eat food off the floor. As a result, justice was called into action and the ethers changed from a peaceful state to one of destruction. Rome attempted to cover up their wickedness and the whole situation by shipping me to a higher security institution. I took action on behalf of the brother who could not defend for himself, and Rome charged myself with interfering and impeding an investigation. It was a bogus charge and a means of breaking up the multitude by sending us to other concentration camps. All is well. Allah is leading on and victory is sure. We came out victorious, and everything Rome has done unto us will come back 1,000-fold. The law will live and will exercise justice in a holy and divine manner. I sent Amor several scrolls, but got no response. All is still well. The brother expressed his sincere support for us, and we trust that his heart is in the right place. Are you still active on the internet? If so, we need you to push the fallback plan information through the wire. As you may know, there has been an outbreak of gang violence in Chicago that has claimed the lives of a lot of Chicago children. I have called the brothers here together so we can begin reaching out to the streets to bring an end to this destruction. We will need the public to support our endeavors and to allow us to work with them in helping these children steer clear of the illusions of the world. I am sending you out a brochure that was created to solicit support for the conscious prison population. Today we have over 100 brothers that have left their gangs and moved in accord with us. This is a major setback for these Roman devils that seek to keep these brothers here in a hateful and divided state. We have exposed the myth that all prisoners are worthless to corruption. We have exposed the myth that all prisoners are worthless and too corrupt to ever walk the righteous path. Over 100 individuals have fell back from gangbanging, but the media and staff here will not let it be known to the outside sources. All this week, the ABC news station in Chicago have been trying to bring some attention to this issue, and I think they would be willing to give us some airtime. I know you and your obligations to the temple and the Moors there demands a great deal of your time, but needing you to insist in this endeavor. Have you started working on any new books yet? When I was in the Pontiac concentration camp, I passed out some of your material to the brothers there, and it was a jewel. Your measures are universal in that it gives credence and respect to all our conscious bodies and divine movements. Keep the universal spirit of our ancestors out front as you convey to the readers the truth concerning our holy and divine nature. In Pontiac, there are a large number of conscious brothers who are NOI, 5%ers, Moors, Panthers, Sunni Muslims, and every one of them had the opportunity to go through some of the Moorish literature. Islam. Most of the conscious, well, I should say a number of the conscious authors and writers that are producing literature tend to attack the spirit and founders of other Asiatic movements. As a result, we all are consumed by this European spirit of hate and are divided amongst ourselves. The Prophet did not bring this sort of teaching, and he would not allow any radical or hateful literature to be disseminated to his people. Stay firm in the prophet's teachings, continue to uplift fallen humanity. Until we meet again, I bid you peace and goodwill. So when we went to Chicago in 2012, 13 or something, and went to visit the Moor at the penitentiary. So had his own room for visits or whatever. All the correction officers, Mr. Bay and all of that. Yeah, how you doing today, Mr. Bay, whatever like that, They were not doing the inmate thing with him like they were doing with the other inmates that, you could see in the vicinity that were walking around. It was a totally different thing. And then talking to him there and realizing how, like you were saying in the thing, being in that environment, it's beneficial to have some type of way out. And the studying and being able to write people and whatever was that thing, because those Moors are looking at life and all. They're not seeing them, you know what I mean? And they're going for their parole hearing, see when they could get whatever. So with things like the Fall Black Plan and stuff like that, there was Moors in Chicago who, were part of that whole campaign, of, making sure that there's literature in there, making sure that, the people in there who are interested have some type of external connection, so that if they do get out there somewhere that they can go, that they're not even gonna miss a beat as far as the transitioning from the institution to outside. So one of the things with Chicago and the Moorish perspective is that Juali's ingrained there. So it's not something that is hard to find out about. You know what I mean? It's there, been there. You know what I mean? Everybody knows it's not, some secret thing. You know what I mean? Like how we might look at it here, that people don't know where we're at, whatever like that. You know what I mean? Like there, it's a known thing, right? And one thing that they always brought to attention was how important it is that the Moors here realize that we're part of something that we're not even able to fathom how important we are to the whole scheme of everything. Right? Being that we're Moors, right? Being that we're coming into the realization of this. They always made reference that the Queen, there's no jurisdictional authority that the Queen has here, because here is part of Morocco as well. Right? Here's where indigenous people were before colonization, right? And like the Moors were talking about earlier, you can see how they use things for their benefit, right? Like we were talking with the release of the 2 Europeans for the Asian, right? That's business. business between two bodies who are in dispute. Took 1 year, will take 2 years. And what do they say, 100, 1,000 days or something that they did? Something like that. Right? And they have nothing to do with anything. They were just collateral damage. You know what I mean? We need two for the one that they have. They worked out their little arrangement, did the trade, and good to go again. Everything's good. Right? So there's a position that we have, being the Moorish nation, and it is to have an impact here in making our people find out this truth that we already know, right? Because this is the only thing that they really have left, right? With jab stuff going on and all that. Everybody, it's obvious that people their consciousness is raising. Because people who you thought might have said, yeah, I'll do it, are like, well, I don't know. And they're thinking about it. And people who you thought would never do it actually went and did the stuff. So there's a lot being revealed once we're aware of it. Is there any comments, questions?
I could add something to what you were saying.
Go ahead, Mark.
A couple days I spoke to Iranian, and he said, "What happened to your people? They don't know that the Pharaohs give them this land over here." I said, "Damn, I read the Pharaoh in the Bible, but you know what the real Pharaoh is? You know what I'm saying? He said the Pharaohs give so-called black people this land over here.
Yeah.
And they think they're from over there.
Yeah.
Armenian, not Armenian.
Iranian.
Iranian telling me that. I put it up here.
Iranian.
And again, with where you say in Chicago, where Noble Joy was, they know. And like for Marcus now, where I'm from in St. Anne, and what they teach me in school, and what I know now, it's another thing.
October 15, 2010. Please pardon self for not pushing ink on pen much sooner. I'm working on behalf of our Holy Prophet to restore unity within this Moorish national and divine movement. The divine work of uniting the Moorish family requires my full attention, but trust that though I am very busy, not a day goes by without me reflecting upon the relation that bindeth you to myself to love and unity. So this is 2 years later, and at the prison where they're at now, they have the temple set up now inside. Right? So they have, they have a grand sheet, they have a place where they go for their meetings every Friday. They got classes going on inside the place, So, and then there was also more near Arizona somewhere where it was the same thing, and then they had it set up where they could even get DVDs and stuff like that sent to them. You know what I mean? And same thing, they had a in-house temple. People who were getting in there, you know, whatever, they were giving out membership cards and all that inside. Right? They had it like that. And then from being inside, once they get released or whatever, then they just transition to the temple outside of the institution. Yeah. I know you are faithful to the Holy Prophet and the cause of uplifting fallen humanity, but you are also to master the circle and understand that each point within our circle must be in harmony with every other point. I advise to conform yourself to the Quran in any manner and make speedy reparation to the utmost power. It is time for us to call into action our brotherhood and begin eradicating the spirit of demarcation and negroism that is moving unrivaled amongst the ranks of this Moorish national and divine movement. The reason we are faced with such a level of division within the body of Moors is due to the overwhelming number of so-called Moorish leaders who had failed to adhere and recognize the Prophet's call for Asia to unite. These very same Moorish leaders are teaching a doctrine of hatred to their flock of members, and they are the main reason why the Moors are in this weak state today. As Moorish Muslims who are adeptly conscious of self and the relation between Allah and man, it is our duty and obligation to serve as revealers of the light to all of humanity. It is no mystery that we refer to the light, to the truth as the light, because it reveals things as they are, it reveals things as they are and not what they seem to be. And in lesson, we learn that man is the truth made manifest, and therefore the knowledge of self reveals to us the oneness of life and teaches us that when we harm man in thought, word, or deed, we wrong Allah. Yet we have Moorish leaders speaking ill of other Moorish leaders and their grand bodies for selfish gains, such as money, power, and control over the Moorish situation. We must be careful in raising up and recognizing individuals as Moorish leaders who are not truly living in accord with the holy and divine principles of our noble Prophet. We must recognize the Moorish leaders within our ranks who appear to be gods, who in reality are but demons in disguise, all powerful, yet full of jealousy and hate and lust. Satan himself has the ability to transform himself into an angel of light at will, and we must bear in mind that his angels, whom accepted his teachings and transformed themselves into revealers of the light for the sole purpose of taking control over the world. Many so-called conscious teachers would question the idea that Satan, who is a liar, murderer, and angel of darkness, has the ability to transform himself into an angel of light. First of all, one must call to remembrance to thy aid and bear in mind the original attribute before he was cast out of the holy city and forced into the dark parts of the earth. As we know, his attribute describes as the son of the morning, which was an angel. In the Moorish Holy Quran, we are taught that the sun is Allah's most noblest image, but we are not to worship the sun. There are Moorish leaders within the ranks who are moving in the same spirit of their father, the devil, who was a murderer and a liar from the beginning. It is time to take our mission to a higher level in a manner that represents what Prophet Noble Drew Ali prophesied during his time functioning upon the earthland. We are not moving in accord with the uniting of Asia as a nation and divine movement established by the great prophet Juali. There are too many grand bodies and too many so-called Moorish leaders standing in the way of our mission to uplift fallen humanity. Draw off the entire measure entitled Kavit M. Tor and understand who and what we are dealing with, and give your measure on what you think should be done to eradicate the destructionists mentioned in this lesson. It is highly important to hear back from you and to know where you are on the path in terms of the state at Canaanland Temple. Please extend my love to Hanif L. and instruct him to write me as well. From the day forward, all institutional matters concerning this Moorish national and divine movement will be directly through me. If you have any unfinished business with any other Moors, please have them write me so we can make accord. Sheikh, all is well on this end. The mother is doing well. Speaking of which, extend my love to everyone. And again, until we meet again.
It reminded me when I was in sending you letters.
Yeah.
I was only allowed to send like a select, like you can only send a certain amount of letters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it seems like some of those guys are able to send like lengthy letters, like where I was at, they're saying you got it kind of short.
Mm.
Sometimes I was even writing you letters out there to erase things, right? You get the letter, like, this is too long, you'll be fine with this.
Yep. You know what's crazy? You know what's crazy? The buses are up. Rennie Bay. Rennie Bay.
You do that on purpose?
Huh?
You do that on purpose? Or?
No, it was in here from last week.
Yeah.
I was supposed to give it to you last week.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it was still in the book. Peace and love, Grand. I'm writing you to keep you connected and up to date with me. I've been transferred from Maplehurst to Penetanguishene Correction Center. My early release date from here is 2016, and my parole eligibility date 2016, which I would be opting for. I put in my application for appeal. First week I got sentenced, which was the first week of April, still no reply. Trying to stay busy here, going to the range where I would be working, taking different programs, help my time to go faster. I've memorized the address of the temple, but I need the number so I can call in sometime.
Just cursive writing.
Yeah. Also, for doing my parole application, I've been keeping up to date. Something with the liberal government and Harper, international law crimes, specifically the mandatory minimum sentencing as well as deportation, etc., etc. But just so you know, it was here. It was here.
We also, I think that's when I was first starting sending some letters.
Yeah.
And all that still in paper, right?
Yeah. This May 2016. Yeah. Let's pass that down. Yeah. Was there any questions? You got any questions, bro? Good for now? All right. Sis? All right. Taj. Hey, Taj. Taj, you're at the bottom of the cup, you know. It's bad. What was it, Omar, that you were talking about?
Just wanting to, since we had the gathering 2 weeks ago for the town hall, we didn't really get an opportunity so much to talk about, you know, some of the stuff that I think town hall sort of addresses, which is the, you know, where we're at right now. And what we see for the movement, what things that we want to see implemented, what things we see as a shortfall possibly of the movement, and what things that we individually think we can do to help further this along. So I just thought about you know, sort of questioning, or not questioning, but querying the group to see you know, where we think things are at post-COVID now. You know, sort of looking at how our liberties are now sort of still continually being sort of compromised, right? If you want to go to a gym right now, they're telling you that you have to take have your vaccinations up to date. If you want to go eat in a restaurant, so supposedly you have to have your vaccinations up to date. So I just thought it would be, I just thought something came to me this morning about sort of seeing where everyone is at and what things we want to see moving forward. It being also the autumnal equinox. We're also going to change of the season. Technically, we should be sort of looking to maybe sort of, as we say, harvest our good intentions and the work that we've done, or possibly, you know, like the tulips and stuff, planting the bulbs right now that are then going to come up in spring. So that was it. Do we think the movement is where it should be at? Where do we see this movement going? Where do we want this movement to go?
I mean, we spoke about this too with, you know, the movement being somewhere where our service to the nation is something that we can do full time. You know, this is something that is so so needed. You know what I mean? At this point, especially with all this stuff going on right now, you know, trying to create the situation where this is something that we're doing full time, you know, 7 days a week in our building, right? Not somewhere else, you know. However it manifests is dependent on where we are mentally, you know what I mean, physically being able to do certain things. But a marker to the future, you know, is that's something that I see, you know, working for the nation, just as everybody else, you know, works for their nation. You know, everybody else has as something that they're doing that doesn't just benefit society, but also benefits their nation. You know, just by them exercising these things or living by certain standards, you know, there's benefit for them. And I think them being that connected to their nation is what allows it to be what it is like that. You know, I keep thinking about like when they started doing Little India and all that. You know, those are modern people that came here, and they were able to amass that, whether it was through some type of relationship they had with the colonizer, whether it was them just being of that mindset that when they get here, you know, buy houses that are close together and have businesses that are close together. Eventually, we're going to own this stuff. You know what I mean? So some of the things, looking at them and how, you know, these different nations come here and, you know, become established. You know, those are some of the goals that I look at with the nation, the movement, the temple. Our issue, like Drew Ali said, is we need finance and we need it badly. And nothing is more greater than that. You know, for us to do certain things that we would want to do as a body. You know, that's one of the pitfalls that we have. You had the other one?
Yeah, so I was talking to my father, who I tried to, I've been explaining to him sort of this position. He lives down in the States, and he was telling me that he had been involved with certain Muslims down there, playing cricket with them in the Detroit area. And he was sort of, I know when I was trying to explain it to him in the beginning, he was sort of dubious about this, because I was explaining to him about how black wasn't who we were, because he was trying to tell me that I needed to be proud of being a Canadian. Because, you know, down in the States right now, you know, we're shooting each other up. And I sort of got mad at him and said, listen, I ain't no Canadian. I said, at the very least, I'm American, because that's who we are, because we're any of the copper-colored races found on the in the Americas, that being inclusive of the Isthmus of Islands. So, anyways, he was sort of doubting me. But then what I found interesting, just like this picture up here that my mother had, which is of the Moorish Zionist church that she found was interesting 10 or 11 years ago. She just had it sitting on her desk. And then when I started to talk to her about this, all of a sudden, this thing she found on her desk, she's a writer. So anyways, he was back in the day with Malcolm X, and he has a whole series of tapes and stuff with Malcolm X's speeches and Martin Luther King. He's sort of getting to that age where he's sort of clearing up his sort of affairs. But he had an article, and I didn't bring it this week. I was going to get Kuja to read it over first. But it was describing how a writer had gone to Chicago, the Mecca, our Mecca, and had sort of gone toward the temples because he understood he was looking at Muslims. He was looking at Islam and its progress in the West, coming from the perspective that Islam came from the East, going West. Not understanding what I was saying to Kuja today, that it was really from the West going East to a certain degree, or more importantly, that it was all over the place. Anyways, one of the things that we've been talking about today was he was saying that how do we as Muslims, not Muslims, but Muslims, come to terms with the aspect that here, Black Muslims see that Islam is really our thing and doesn't belong to anyone else, but that in some of the information that he's garnered, that over in Europe and China, there are Chinese Muslims, there are European Muslims, and that over there, Islamic teachings are universal, whereas here they seem to be very confined to so-called
Islamic
Muslims. Yeah. And how do we come to terms with that? And so we had a little back and forth, and what I had said was that what we are experiencing, i.e. the Nation of Islam, is basically the fracturing or the explosion of the Moorish Science Temple of America vis-a-vis Noble Ali, which had what's the word, had disrupted, and then was being, I likened it to a fire that had all these logs in it that certain individuals were picking up and taking and then going off into their areas. And then sort of due to their own biases and whatever, creating these sects. And what I said is that part of, I think, the response, because he had also been talking in regards to racism and how he had felt that nothing's changed. And that picture underneath the other picture is of me when I was 6 and my mother was dragging me around to some down with the racist immigration policies. That was 40 years ago. And explaining, and he was coming to the realization that none of this has changed. But he was also coming from the perspective, that he was implying that there was racism that was out there, and that we had to counter this. And this is some of the problems that I've been having at my workplace. But they keep talking about this racism out there. There's all this racism stuff. I said, well, wait a minute, who are the racists? Because we keep talking about racism, but we never identify who the racists are. Because ultimately, it's in identifying who we are teaching about that really should be what it is. Because what I sense happened is we talk about racism out there, the institutions are racist. But Taj has made it clear to us that it's not the administration that's the problem, or the administrative bodies, it's the people in the administration. But if they can keep us distracted that there's this racism out there, then we're fighting this entity that continues to move around and shift. If we find the people that are being racist and take them out, then we're going to have a chance at this. But he was asking me why he felt that we here seem to be so intent upon Islamic teachings being just for Black people. And what I had said to him was that he's right that this is an international and universal concept and teaching, but that part of what our issue is that due to racism, we have to get our house in order, because we're still calling ourselves Black. We still don't have an identity, and this ties in with exactly what you're saying, Cujo, that other nations and other definitely know who they are, and maybe killing each other, fight what they need to fight. Then they'll deal with their issue. Whereas with us, we are too busy fighting ourselves. We don't know who we are because we don't have any culture. We're calling ourselves, which is an adjective, which then takes us out of this, and that this is really where our problem is. We haven't been able to come to an understanding that even if we're Jamaican or Trini or whatever, we're still all part of a larger body, and that it's basically the Sun Tzu aspect of divide and conquer. Mm-hmm. And what I was then coming to terms with right now in my industry that I'm in, I got involved with a group called the Aboriginal Workers of Color, which is what they were calling this 6-7 years ago. And I had a huge fight with them about how we weren't people of color. And I defined to them what color was and that we weren't this. Now, Aboriginal, I said we are, because we're Aboriginal, but they weren't qualifying that we were the Aboriginals. They were qualifying that the so-called Native Indian was the thing. But so now this thing has sort of, due to sort of COVID, and I think due to the fact that all of this is just them playing games with the energy flow. But now we're this BIPOC. That's the word. So if you start to come into our own, and even still we should be owning Aboriginal workers of color, even though we know that that's a misnomer. Now they started to yet again change the narrative. Just like we were Black, just like we were African, just like we were African Canadian, African American. Now we're Aboriginal worker of color. No, hold on. Now you're BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and person of color. I said to my father, well, wait a minute. So if I'm Black, Indigenous, and person of color, aren't I really a person of color? Right? Because, well, you're going to say Black is in color, but how come you have a designation for Black and then in the same acronym, you have a person of color.
Yeah. Which
Because
both
right
of
there-
those are the same.
I would think so.
But reality, all three of them are the same.
I would think so again. But yet again, this is the energy. And now, so we've been doing this forum, and you guys maybe can be involved in this. And I can read out, I don't have it here, I can get it on email. We're having all these forum, racism in the workplace, how to deal with racism, all this stuff. Not saying who are the racists, how do we take them out?
Yeah.
But the last forum that we're gonna have is racism is a virus. And I said to Cujo, racism is a virus, but nationality is the cure. Step up for the jab. So we're gonna have a series of lectures as to this. But what I realized again is that this is the game that they play to keep us sort of distracted from this. But I noticed that every time we start, it's this check and balance. As we start to wake up, you're no longer Aboriginal. Now you're back to being black again. I've also heard a European talk about us being POC. I don't know if you've heard of POC. POC is people of color. So yet again, I've just been realizing that these people are organized. And they're making sure to keep us where we're at. We have yet to organize ourselves. But we do know that anytime we do start to get organized, they start to get in there. But this doesn't happen. As we see, Min Wong Zhou, they had her here for 3 years. She wasn't in jail, even though she was jailed in her mansion,
Yeah.
right? Meanwhile, those 2 Europeans were in jail,
Yeah.
about to be killed. But it was being played out to us as if there was some issue. She just sat her shit out, and at the end of the day, rule of law came to play, and she went home.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't know if you saw the little thing they had her there in front of all of her nationals, and they were all cheering, right? As she was going home,
Yeah.
right? And the deal being, though, we laugh. But our problem is that we don't have any pride and any nationalistic connectivity for ourselves.
Yeah.
And this is all because of the spell of black. So
People
anyways,
of color and all the other spells that they.
all the other spells, as I said, we're now BIPOC.
Yeah.
Black, and I've been trying to tell these, oh, but that was the last part. So this is what I was talking to people. In our local, Aboriginal workers of color comes under human rights. So I said 7 years ago, well, if it comes under human rights, why aren't we just talking about human rights? But they didn't want to talk about that. And what I realized is that's part of the game too. Because yet again, it's kind of in this fractured way of saying that it really is about workers' rights. That's all we want.
Yeah, they don't want human rights. They want workers' rights.
Right, but what
Yeah.
they're doing is they're fixing certain things to
Yeah.
answer the fact that certain people are waking up.
Yeah.
Right? So, oh shit, okay, well, and if you notice this now, this is what was killing me today. You notice now, indigenous, so-called indigenous, are the flavor of the day now.
Yeah.
Right? We've got an indigenous governor general, we've got this, and what I realized is that this thing now is the fact that we are awake, and it came to me now that what they're doing again is they are creating a divide.
Or
By,
creating.
gi-
Yeah.
by giving the indigenous, so-called indigenous, the native Indians, something that's not theirs to begin with.
Mhm.
Under the guise that this is what they should have given them, right? This is what they should have had years ago. But have they given these people, have they taken these people off the reserves or
Yeah,
anything like that? Have they just put a couple of figureheads in there, but they're talking about the indigenous now and truth and reconciliation
Yeah.
and all this stuff. Yet we're still out of the picture here. But what they're now doing is they're bypassing us, sort of doing the same thing that they've done before, which is pay off a few of their sort of leader guys and keeping it rolling. And it's the same game again, just dressed up as something else. And so anyways, this lady, because I don't know if you've been with Sacramento, anytime you have these things, they'll have this land recognition thing. I don't know if you guys have this at work. We want to thank the Wendat
Yeah.
and the Mississippi and the Mississauga guys for the land that we're on, this effing garbage, right? And thank them for giving, but they're not giving them back the land.
Yeah.
They're thanking them for the land, but they ain't taking. Did anyone have we ever figured out what happened with these 1,000 children? That they found murder in these sites?
Right.
No one's talking about that, right? But so at the end of the day, they bypassed us. They're sort of pretending to answer this issue of them being racist while not being while not answering it, while sort of giving the optics as if they're doing something about it, but then just keeping this thing going. So anyways, this lady, and what they do now is they'll have someone that looks as you wouldn't even be able to tell that she's indigenous. She'd say, "Hi, I am Marsha Coldfeather, and I'm gonna light some smudge here for the blah blah blah." Right? And she goes out and thinks, "This is crazy. They've now married themselves back into the indigenous angle, right? By pretending that they're now indigenous, though they're as European as ever." Because anytime I see indigenous stuff going on, everyone looks European.
Yeah, always.
Huh?
Well, there's a situation like that. You're looking at that. Once you reach like past the 1800s, like after 1850 and 60, the complexion changed. So you can look at like after the Civil War and all that, they changed everything.
Yeah, but sorry, brother. The complexion changes to who?
As you said, they look more European.
No, but the deal being is that the complexion doesn't change. You go in the reserves and they're looking just like us.
Yeah.
I'm saying what has changed is the optics that they put out have changed. What they've done is they've just been able to marry into a couple of the families, and now the people that they're getting to speak for it, they have people that look like us all over the place that should be speaking, but they'll have someone that looks European, so that you start to now be confused. And this is what I was saying to Cujo and these people back in the day. This whole do your genealogy thing was all part of their plan to start to then tie them back into the family of nations, so that they could then have a claim here. That's, in my perspective, what that was all about. Anyways, this lady stepped up because I wanted to start speaking about, because they were talking about workplace trauma. And what I wanted to tell them was that the trauma that I feel is that when I come into my locals to go talk about things, that you guys are just as corrupt as everyone. Well, they cut me off, and she ended up coming up and going, "Look, I just want to say that we're all humans." So, right, and she broke down and started crying, and basically trying to imply that this was not about color, because they had some ladies coming from the Arabs now that are complaining about them being discriminated against, the Chinese now who are being discriminated because of COVID. Right, all these people now are complaining about their being discriminated against. But she then came up to say that, but we're just all humans. But the deal is that we're still here now, talking about all these different colors. How come we don't wipe this all out and talk about humans?
Yeah.
It can't happen, because, they were also bringing up, and some of us need to know about this, all the migrant farmers that they're bringing up from the West Indies to work here on the farms, that then want to settle here, but they don't want them settling here. So that then they're sending them back. Once the fellow from down south comes up, he knows that this is where I want to be.
Yeah, of course.
So just showing you that these people are still about their business, and the organizations are still there. But remember, I said this to my father today: the building isn't racist against me, the gun isn't racist against me. It's the person behind that. Yet we keep stepping over the people. I said we can identify Trump as a racist because he's going about Trump being crazy. I said, could we say Bush is racist? Could we say Clinton was racist? Could we say, and of course he couldn't deny that. But and I said, this is our problem. We're too scared to take this on because this problem is too big. But really, we have to come together and unify, and then we can start dealing with this problem, but we're not unified. Anyway, there you go.
One of the first things we need to, we know already, but that's one of the things, all these people you're talking to are, one of the first things you gotta let them know, there's different nation, but one human race. So the word racism, you don't need to even talk, that doesn't exist. It should never exist. Should we have to really even fight over race now? It should never exist. Let's fight over nation. Even the Bible said nation against nation. And now we're in the race with the racism. And it's only one human race. One human race. Big, wide, extended family, one human race. Different nation. That's the key to it. And all these people need to know that. Once they know that and can accept that, then they won't have a color issue. They won't have another issue because it's one human race.
But I mean that's not the narrative of the day. If you try and talk to these people about that, and as I said,
What I'm saying is that this is like the black is adjective, the beginning. Once you know that black is adjective, you won't say you're black.
Yeah.
So this is like the basic. There's only one human race, so you won't even think human race. Once we can get that in our head, firmly, no government, so-called, nobody can tell us nothing different.
But what I realized, part of the,
Then we could grow from there. It's like in the school, they teach us from the ABC, then we use the ABC letters and found words.
but part of what I realized is at the core of this is the way that they've imprinted upon us our identification. I can't tell my father that we're not black.
Yeah.
He will not, he doesn't compute with that.
Or is that just his reality?
That's his.
Well, that's the reality.
You know, the reality that's been created. They've accepted that as the reality.
But what I'm so happy about, people my age group, like your father, will say, yeah, he still hold on to black. But what I like, or what I love, is the young ones, they said, no, I'm brownish. I'm not black. So those are the ones Noble John said I wanted to get. The young and the young, they will get it. And I know when I talk to young people, it's a totally different story. Then when I talk to older ones that should have more experience, they are dumb as hell.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
You know, children know when the adult knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
They're actually going to pay more attention to it.
For sure. They do every day I talk to them. Even in front of adults, I said I don't even want to talk to you. It's not an insult. I'm listening to my babies. They have to shut up because it's their children. It's their children I'm talking to them about in front of their children. I see one lady the other day. I said, ma'am, could I say something to your daughter? Like she's going to school. I said, how many fingers do you have, baby? She said 10. I said, who told you that? Oh, yeah, the teachers, the content. So what happened to your thumbs? Oh, we have 2 thumbs. Then if you have 2 thumbs, or you have 10 fingers, what left after the tick of 2? 8. The mother said, wow, I never look at it like that. But you're right, sir. You're right. And just that was just a moment of putting something in that baby's head on the bus. Nobody can fool that baby again about she have 10 fingers. Because she knows she have 2 thumbs. She always say thumbs up, she know them. But at the same time, she get it mixed up with 10 fingers. But it's 8 fingers and 2 thumbs. And today now, like Christine, we were talking when we go over on the weekend, understand? About the whatever, the internet and whatever, and tongues. So she texted me back yesterday with what she found out. The phone now, why they use the tongue to work the phone. The tongue is the one that connects to your brain, not the rest, the tongue. So they use the tongue on the phone, and that's a part of their 5G, whatever, to connect to your brain and you can't get off this phone. That's what we found out when she researched it. And it makes sense. The tongue, the tongue, the rest have no use without it. So he's more powerful, he's more connected to the brain than the rest. The tongue could hold, the tongue can touch the rest of 4, but the 4 cannot touch each other in their face, cannot. The fingers can't do it, but the tongue can work with all of them. So they're using the tongue on the phone now, on the computer now, to feed the brain from their 5G to mess the people up. And I know that from maybe 10 years ago, I was doing some work on a site at the Architectural College of University downtown when it was building. I was doing some work in there. And on my way coming up, I heard someone on the radio and the conveyance saying, he's telling people that their children, they should never let their young men especially keep that phone on their body because it's going to affect their reproductive system. That was like 10 years ago I heard that. On today's day, the only thing keep the baby quiet in the stroller is the phone in his hand. Here we go. There we go. Once that baby have the phone, you don't even want a bottle of feed. That's all.
Electricity, right? So
Yeah.
The blockages when we have certain electronics.
Mhm.
I was just saying that yesterday, actually. I think they come out of the womb connected to the phone.
Mhm.
I think it starts from
The
us.
mother,
Yeah,
the mother.
we don't really understand the amount of brainwashing or connection that I've been watching that with the young kids. Try to take the
Children,
phone
not
away.
kids. Sorry, children.
Yeah.
Children.
Yeah, try to take the phone away from them, and it's like you're trying to block out their life, like you're trying to kill them. They will even fight you. A child who isn't usually aggressive, and you try to take the phone away from them, and they're out like a war.
I work at a shop there. And another worker said to the boss, son, I give you $100 right now. Just let me have the phone for 2 hours. So you're not handling. No. $100. I give you $100 now just to stay off the phone for 2 hours. No, no money. No money. That's how hooked they are. It's because it's connected to their brain. Solidly, firmly, their brain is in it, and they can't say nothing. Can't go wrong.
Who is it that's in the phone?
Stefan, yeah. Coco tell him. Coco said, I give you $100 now. Here it is. Just get off the phone for 2 hours. 1 hour. Nope.
All hour, this man said no.
No.
I would have took that.
2 hours? 3 hours.
You know what I mean? Put a that 200 on it, we go for 4 hours.
I would not.
Good, Omar.
1,000 bucks for 24 hours.
Some of these children know how to make like that amount in 2 minutes on their phone.
For real.
Right.
What's that?
Some of them know how to use their phone to make that amount of fiat in way less time. So they
Oh, yeah.
there's no way they're giving up their phone.
Because that's some of the profit coming.
Yeah, exactly.
That's some of the profit coming. But there's the deeper downside from it that they don't know.
Omar.
No, I was just gonna say that this is what I started off with when I called you this morning, Cujo, in regards to us sitting and talking with these things. I said to my father too, I said, we don't need to talk about where we're at right now. No, you don't need to continue to convince me that the system is racist, that things are messed up. My question is, what are we gonna do about it? Because my issue is, we got caught up trying to continue. As I said, I don't need to be convinced anymore that I'm a Moor. What am I now going to do about it? You know, I said this to you here at one time too. You don't need to be telling me about what happened in the 1800s and this was this and this was that. What are we going to do about bringing ourselves back? The problem is that we need to start looking at this from a microcosm. We have to start with today, not about getting to our nation. How are we going to get to the owning the block? How are we going to get to taking back our families? That's what I said to my father today, because he's one of these ones. I love him, but you know, he was one of these ones caught up with, you know, having a child with my mother and then off with some other lady. And to me, I'm not saying that that's not a universal issue, but it seems to affect us much more, probably due to the fact of where we're at. But also, I was having another discussion with another gentleman yesterday night in regards to it's our feminine energy. It's the principle like you started off with. The prophet was holding an unconscious Moabite woman in his hands. Now, you see that the women aren't unconscious, right? Look at this outside here. See what I'm saying about that? Like on cue, right? But the deal being, how do we wake them up? How do we wake ourselves up? What does that look like? What are our first steps? I said this to Cujo. If tomorrow they said to us, here's your nation back, what does that look like? How does that play out? And that's where I think we need to be at. I think the time for needing to be convinced and having some kind of data to back. I mean, the prophet did tell us to take it to the hedges and the highway. I think that was one instruction. The other one too was to start business to start to look after our families and to start to bring ourselves back to where we need to be. So what does that look like? I know that tends, it's like this. We have, either we can sit down and watch some TV, or we have to go dig a ditch. Well, 90% of us are probably gonna go are gonna sit down and watch some TV. Right? So we've gotta get up there and still dig that ditch. That's the part that's gonna create the hole to put the foundation in to build our nation. And I don't know how that takes, but every other nation has that ingrained in them. And that's, I think, some of the stuff that we've lost. And that's where I think some of our stuff is getting back to the rituals and the things that other nations take. My empress comes from an Asian background. They know what their blood type is.
No, you hear that?
They
Really use no.
yeah, that's the thing.
The problem with us is that we don't know ourselves. So
No,
there's
that-
nothing, that's the key. You can do nothing if you don't know yourself. You will be doing it as a black man or as a Negro or a colored or a minor, but that doesn't mean you know yourself. You might be driving a Benz as a Negro, but you don't know yourself. So the key is to know yourself. Like the Bible said repeatedly, man, know thyself. Man, know thyself. Who are you? Kevin Johnson. That's a European and French name. But you look African. Here we go. Once we know ourselves, then we could start to move. But we can't have a body or whatever carry some people that don't know themselves. It's hard. The key is, once they know themselves, it's like when the Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all the rest will be added unto you. Once you know yourself, all the rest will be added unto you. That's what it means.
Mhm.
That's what it means.
Islam.
So once you know yourself, that get rid of the minority, the Negro, the colored, and the black. That's out. So now, knowing yourself, nobody can bring a conversation to you about racism. You won't even spend a time of it to listen to that. So even the media and the news talking about it, you know they are just blocking the way, blocking our face from knowing the truth.
That's it. Because when that day happens, it's over.
So
TV's gone,
Yeah.
the system's gone, the chemical, my part, even alphabet soup crap is done.
try to use these things for modern this, modern that. Nothing is new. The pyramid was built by us, and nobody on the planet Earth knows how it built. So if we build a pyramid and nobody knows, we could walk through wall. We used to walk through wall.
Come in, sister. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Is
Okay.
So yeah, but as I said, so now knowing that we know that, what is our next step?
We just need to let more people know. Because
Well, I would say this, sorry to
Okay,
cut you. Sorry, go ahead, please, sorry.
the mass is sleeping.
No, but this is where it just came to me now as you were discussing this, because when you said knowing yourself, it then brought into my mind that this is where Zahir possibly has a point. That the more information you have amassed as to who you are and how we're connected, that helps give us that foundation. But what I see beyond that is the fact that what they've done is they've been able to disconnect the actual people that are involved in this. I was telling my dad, did he know about the Birth of a Nation, the movie? He said he didn't know. And so we got to check that one out. Because in one of the books that I was reading, the European gave me, it talks about how Birth of a Nation was the beginning of Hollywood.
yeah, the silent movie.
No, the beginning of Hollywood.
Yeah,
The silent
the first- yeah,
but-
the first one,
here's-
yeah.
but here's what I say. Hollywood is what runs us all. Whether we know it or not, Hollywood and the aspect of visuality and visuality, the aspect of looking at stuff on your screen and taking what you see on the screen as legitimate is what they now have us all sort of distracted with. Because we all now have a screen in our pocket, at least one. I've actually got 3. No, but we laugh. But I remember 20, 30 years ago, I had a book and a radio.
Yeah.
That was it. And my mind was wild.
Yeah.
At this point, it's been dumbed down. And what I'm saying is that Hollywood is Holly. And if anyone did the same about Hollywood, it was the Holly branch is what they make wands of it. Right? So they've been casting spells on us. So the deal is, what's happened now is we see all these images and don't understand that there's a puppet maker behind them, or a puppet master. And we now have to, what are the steps now that we are going to take after we know who we are to give ourselves stuff back? Because where the step is now, we're expecting the European now to give us something, because that's what they told us is supposed to happen. The European ain't going to be giving us something like that anymore, or at all. So we have to now plan and make the next steps. We had an individual group. Do you remember that land race plan that we went up to? We was talking about getting some land. Remember,
Yeah.
and saying he wanted to take over this land. I mean, as I said, that to me would be step one. Having some place that is ours, that we can determine who we are. Because right now we're still being determined by what they are telling us we are. Whether we know it or not, whether we talk about it or not, whether we now say that we're going to be involved in black or white, that stuff is still affecting us. So that's the next step that I see is our issue. Is that even though we know that we're Moors, they're still looking at us as black. They're still treating us as black. And that is something that we have to start to.
Whenever they do, that's when we gotta step up.
No, I know, but remember, here's what my point is. We're fighting a fight that has nothing to do with us. We're spending all of our time trying to get off taxes, to claim some land. No, it's about well, claim some land, claim a house. No, it's about coming together as a community, i.e. like the Mennonite do, and building their community again. But most of us are too interested in, like you say, getting our families or getting a mansion. And so that's where I see our issue is, that we're now at the point that we know who we are. But because we don't have a script to get beyond that, that's where our issue is.
We know, but we still need more to know. I know it's Bajoli already said, when it's over, you could count the people on his hand and fingers left. So that just give you an idea of what's gonna happen. So like even the Bible said, many are called, few are chosen. Few people you see walking without mask like me. Massive wearing their mask, even in their car alone wearing it. But the few of us that we have, we need to build a stronger body, a closer bond.
Yeah.
Because I know, for example, this building worth $5 million. 20 more can find $500 a month or $1,000 a month. That's $20,000. We could take care of that money. And who knows what goes on the road after? And own that living in that, you know what I mean? We can, but we have to have that plan, not just knowing ourselves. We know ourselves now, let's start work together now, do things together now, because we can. A lot of us, we go to the job and we pay $500 for car payments, for insurance, that's $900. You could offer $500 and pay another maybe 3 or 4 for the insurance, that's 7. That too could go into the building application. And that's what we ourselves that know ourselves need to come together strongly and do. The other nations do it. That's why they could just take over places. They buy one house, 20 of them in the house.
So how about that for that question of how do we go about doing that? Bringing the bond together
Yeah,
so we can get more stuff done.
right. That's what we need to figure out.
Through education, like in essence, I can't really build a community up if you haven't, you know, you have to build up the people. We as a people need to know what love is and know how to love each other. Without it, like, what's the sense of having a building or a community and we don't feel the connection? And once the connection, the vibration is there, like it's love.
That's the first principle.
Yeah, if a man knows what he's worth, what he can accomplish is completely different. That's what we're lacking as a people, is the knowledge. For instance, maybe I'm talking too much. When I'm at a turning point in my life, my whole life, I've had my hair straightened, right? So God has been preparing me for this periodically. Then a couple months before, I would say like 6 or 7 months before COVID, my hair starts acting out really weird. The part that's coming out of my skull can't even comb. And then the other part is like straw, right? So initially cut. And I recognize now, when I have my hair out in a fro, a big fro, I'm there walking on the sun and I feel like I'm so strong, right? I feel like there's nothing that can penetrate my armor. So that in itself, our hair represents something. I would like to personally know what, there's certain things that's lacking that we need to understand. The importance of our hair, natural hair.
Spiral. I mean, so I'm saying.
There should be something there still.
It's an antenna, like it really doesn't work without the antenna.
Well, if I can't even explain the difference. I'm
That's what I'm
telling
trying to
you,
tell
like
you.
my whole life,
That's what I'm
I
trying
just
to
do
tell you.
sometimes now and it's like, whoa.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's an antenna, and you go play with your antenna, burning up with burn, messing up with heat comb, and all of that stuff. That's what you were doing with your antenna.
The question now being, why was that?
Yeah, because they've been telling us to do it, like programming us to do it.
Say
Why?
what it is because what's happened is the masculine energy has been chasing down the European woman, and then the sister who sees this is trying to then, because this is part of what is put into you, is to be able to attract the opposite sort of energy to then be able to create life. And they notice that somehow the opposite seem to be attracted to this straight hair. So then you're putting this thing in your hair to get your hair straight because you know that you have to keep your nation going. And if someone's not going to mate with you, you have to, this is what it is in nature. And this is why you will see the feminine energy or the masculine energy, that they have certain ones that are more, they seem to be more colorful, they're more beautiful. Those are the things that then attract the opposite to them. So this is what you're doing. You are seeing that somehow men seem to like straight hair. So then you're making your hair straight.
Yeah, the conditioning. Your program is doing that is more.
And that comes from, yet again, what I said was the Hollywood. Which is, if you look and turn on any of these things, all of these empresses, our sisters don't have the big fro. Either they got no hair, or they've got this little afro, or it's bleached blonde, right? Or it's an extension, or it's straight.
Okay, you know what? My sister did a research on that, right? And she said our so-called black people, women, especially the ones that I said so-called.
I said so-called.
You understand what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
you put the so-called in there. You put the so-called in
Sorry, you're saying that
Your sister with the
done
hair.
research
Yeah,
with the hair.
with here, and
Yo, it's good.
goes to.
Sorry, we'll bring you back. You were saying the so-called black people with the hair you're doing the research on why.
Oh, yes, now.
Right.
She said, oh, if these people think the government gonna give them more handout, when the government check the status of the money they give them, 60% of it goes to hairstyle and clothes. You don't need no more. You don't need any more.
Yeah.
You'll never get another penny.
Yeah.
If it's a welfare check or assistant check, when they check the status of where that money goes.
And who's it going to?
Back to them. Back to them.
Your own community that you're
Yeah.
buying all that accessories from.
Different people.
Well, but this is the other part of
Chinese
it.
and the Indians selling it here.
Yeah, but this is the other part of it, this is what we're talking about, and this is the second part of it, and it's not the European you have to worry about. It's
No,
really-
we're not worried about it.
it's- No, I'm saying that they're not the real problem.
No, we are the problem. We are the problem. We are the one that don't know ourselves. They know that they come over here and they're Canadian. And I said, you know that Canada is a corporation, artificial body of people. Yeah, you're Canadian, live in large. They know that.
Mhm.
They know that. And I know. I said, you know you're a privilege. Yeah, I know to take care of my privilege so I don't lose it. That's their argument.
And they're winning with that argument.
Oh yeah, because they're better from where they come from.
Yeah, but it's interesting, one of the things that they said, I was talking to the same fellow I was yesterday, he tells me a terrible story too, but anyways, I was talking about how, and my mom was saying the same thing, that the damage that the Europeans did in our so-called areas, i.e. the islands, was such that it created, and you notice this now, it's the same thing with the Syrians. They go into these different countries, they create havoc there. These people then come here,
Mhm.
they become the workforce, slave labor here, thinking that because through the media, they think that this is the land of opportunity and blah, blah, blah. But really, at the end of the day, they have sold out. And that even my mother today says that she wishes she stayed. Because at least those people, they are back at home were her people.
Yeah.
She sold out for nothing. It was an illusion. And so, as I said, this is our home, just like that was. And one of the things that I realized is at the core of this, what I think our first step would be is commitment. I remember at the beginning of this movement, I was in a decade ago,
That's the key.
and coming on Sundays was new to me because football was on Sundays. NFL, that stuff was, I have to be there. Get your Polaroid ticket, sit down and watch, whoever the hell it was, Jerry Rice or whoever. And then now.
No, you're taking it back there, buddy.
Huh?
Taking it back.
Roger Craig, bro, come on, guy.
Barry?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like 20, that's like 40 years ago.
I mean,
10 years ago, you mentioned Jerry Rice.
It wasn't, no, the 10 years, no, the 10 years was for something else. But anyways, we'll come back to the years. Oh, Marshall, you see? No, but, no, 10 years, the 10 years, the perspective of coming into this movement.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, then I mentioned Jerry Rice. No, I know, but
I have to trade off football for this. And you.
No, I know, I mentioned Jerry
Jerry
Rice,
Rice.
but I was saying that 10 years ago. Anyways, so, thanks, brother.
Yeah.
See, this is what our problem is right here. Can't even get appointed. That's it. No, the issue being commitment.
Yeah.
What I realize now is Sundays. Oh, I remember 30 years ago going to church every Sunday. Really, this is my church. And this is my home. Now it's about moving up from it being 1 day a week to 2 days a week. So then being 5 days a week. Blah, blah, blah. But really, to me, at the core of all of it, I think the first step is commitment.
Yeah.
You have to be committed to this.
Just remember, Sundays was one of my best days. You know why? That's when I get to do my hustling at work.
Okay.
That's when I get to go and do my job in the boss's shop, collect my money that is even more than a day's pay that they give me. Sunday was my day. There's nobody there. Sunday. And now, that's out.
Well, they get smart. This is the problem. They're always.
No, it's not that they stop me. It's that I have to be here.
Yeah,
Oh,
commitment.
I see.
I have to be here. I can't be there.
Fair
I
enough,
have to be here.
fair enough. But you know that.
Just like you say, you give up the football game.
No, but I mean, so I'm saying the finance and making life better for yourself, that's too bad. Ultimately, you know that this is priceless what you're getting.
Exactly, so you can't compare. Don't even try. Don't even try. No.
Islam. Any questions or comments?
I was gonna say, carry off what Omar is saying, commitment is, it's all internal. It's on every individual, like how you're saying, it's, how are you gonna, there's no point of building that, then if, love is not there.
Correct.
It's like everybody has to look for themselves and see what they're doing here. First of all, what they're doing here, what they want out of this, and know where this is going. What's that quote? Is it, this is leading to a destination that's not unknown to men?
Yeah.
Right? So,
It's a commitment, but before the commitment, I think, there comes a willingness, right? You have to be willing to give up what you thought, who you thought you were, what you thought you were.
That's a part.
And all that stuff. Because you gotta be willing to do that. And
You can't commit
because we're already committed to stuff. Commitment's not a problem. We just have to be willing to commit to something different than what we're accustomed to.
because the willpower is sluggish.
Right.
Well, it's at a different level.
That's why. That's why we can't give up devices and give up whatever we think our lifestyle is and whatever to commit to something new that's going to be more beneficial to us, right? So it's that willingness, like you have to say, you know what, this is not important to me no more. Correct. And you got to find that importance in this,
In something else.
right? And then a lot of times, until shit hits the fan, is when people want to activate themselves or become conscious or aware of something like that. And then that turmoil, that tragedy, or whatever you're going through, that tribulation goes away now, and then
You wanna pull your car up there?
and you become dormant again, right? We become dormant, and then we don't wanna
You wanna pull your car up there?
we don't wanna do the necessary things no more because we're comfortable.
Well, half an hour, 45 minutes, if you're gonna stay, maybe you should. That way you're not going anywhere, that way you don't have to worry.
Once you're willing, I think it'll come natural.
Well, I'll say this, I goes like this to this, I remember when we get the timing right, 20 years ago, starting off with 10 sit-ups. Within a year, I was doing 1,500. We started off with the first 10.
Yeah.
So, and that's the same with here, maybe I would come once a month, but then it was twice a month, it was 3 times a month. Nothing will start off whatever, but you just have to be committed to it, keep it sort of current, and know that there will be times maybe you step back, but as long as you keep that interest in this, it starts to become your life, which it is, whether you know it or not. Islam, so could you want to read something?
Islam, yeah. Just with regard to the commitment. Follow this divine principle. If you don't restrict to this divine principle, then you are not a true Moor, and the heads are not to overcharge for membership or to overcharge for cards, buttons, or anything issued by the Prophet. Those who contribute to either of the preceding are not Moors but robbers. Membership, sisters and brothers, is free, not only here but all over the world. The button is 25 cents, card 25 cents, and 1 month's dues is paid. Every member pays 50 cents a month for dues. This money goes toward the support of the temple. This, if not paid, does not entitle you to the protection that is provided for you, and especially if you are not working or in a position to work. If you neglect to fulfill this small duty assigned to you, how can you rightfully expect money or other help when you are sick or otherwise disabled? And so the saying of, you get out what you put in. Whatever work you put in, there's gonna be a response. There's gonna be a return. You know, how much is being put in so that you can get the return, whatever the return is. You know what I mean? And the return is going to be evident to you only because you're the one who's putting it in. Even when we say about collectives putting in, the collectives could put all their thought in to one thing that we want to manifest. You know, like for example, like how we got to this place.
Yeah, correct.
You know, everybody knew over there was tight. And the ritual of coming together, putting the money on the table, or putting the fiat on the table, coming together, meeting about it, coming together, talk, then space just presented itself. You know, because of the energy
And
that
look at it,
was going in.
We didn't have to get a moving vehicle to move.
Yeah,
Just walk across
walk
the
across the
street.
street.
Just walk across the street.
Yeah.
How close could it be?
Yeah. Mhm. I know, that'll be a little, just office.
Like
Yeah.
that could be like a little library.
Yeah,
for your
yeah.
Books. And
Yeah.
showcase and what you have.
Yeah.
Well, we get.
Yeah.
We get.
But we had a squad before we had that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Didn't last that long either.
Yeah.
But yeah, the intent was there. I think with the willingness to, what I was talking about, comes an acceptance. It's like,
So maybe a realization.
yeah, realization or acceptance, but you have to come to an acceptance that this is where you're at and this is where you want to be, right? Because sometimes people are delving into this info and this knowledge and they're not sure, like they haven't really, they don't think they're more, they're not just trying to figure out or whatever, like it is.
Mhm.
Just playing the fence, right? Just trying to see, like, when I came into myself with this stuff, it was already in me personally. Like, I didn't really have to go through a lot of deliberation within myself to like figure out whether this is what happened. But there still has to be an acceptance. Like you have to come to yourself, like I have to say to myself, like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm a more. We are more. It's based off of what I'm seeing and what's being presented to me. Yeah, I'm a more. Now I have to be willing to change certain things about myself, right? And once I start that, then boom, through the repetition, right, and the practice of trying to deprogram to reprogram, that's where the commitment comes, right? Because it starts becoming second nature. So it comes, so you start telling yourself, okay, this is my duty, it's my obligation. And then you just start living the stuff you started practicing.
Mhm.
Is this journey also a connection to God? Like being a more, is it your connection to God?
Well, of course, it's my birthright. So definitely has to connect to the progenitor, the ones who came before that extension, that line from the all down to
the angel, to the messengers, to the
certain descendants. Yes,
Search for truth.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Those are our principles, right? Love, truth, our first principle is love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice.
and those are some of the things that you would have to be here to get. You're not getting those things out there. Being amongst Moors is how you get what love really is to Moors. You're not gonna, it's like we say, people want to know about Moors and then they go ask a black guy, or they go ask a Kemetic guy, or they go ask a whatever and not ask a Moor. You want to present
Yeah,
this?
just quickly, I'm just trying to save the spot for the sister who then moved. But I remember how it came to me. I remember being back in high school and you're a black guy. And I looked at my skin and said, wait, I'm not black.
Yeah.
I'm a brown. What does that mean? They used to call me 0.5 boy, or half breed. I mean, we laugh at these things. These were the things that I remember thinking. And then I remember thinking, okay, well, look at the state that we're in. I used to think, well, I'm not a bad guy. But yet anytime I would asked them why black people seem to be, so-called black people, they seem to have such aversion because they would say, you're not really black, right? Because of the fact of the way that I talked or maybe my features. But then I realized, and this is where the commitment came, that the state of my, she's just interesting, the condition that I'm in has never gotten any better. Even though I have tried to comply and do all the things that they wanted me to do, I was still being profiled, I was still being marginalized, I was still being neglected. But I wasn't being able to be given a proper reason as to why, it's like, they talk about Germany killing all these Jews. Yet Germans do very well right now. No one's holding anything against Germans right now. So you would think that everyone would be castigating every German you saw. Yet somehow they're always castigating black people. And I can't even figure out what it is, because they deal drugs, they're whatever, or this kind of music. But I realized there's something deeper. I realized there was something that is, because we're the only set of people that I noticed that they continue to hold down time and time again. Because everyone else I've noticed, okay, we're mad at you for this. But then, okay, I'm sorry, and we move on. How come it's us that this thing has continually been against? As I said, BIPOC just today made me realize that something's up. Because they ain't even giving us people of color. We're black. But aren't we people of color?
What did they say? Like, they won't be in the boat. So it's like, why would they what's going to happen? What they've done. They have to do it because look at it like from say this perspective.
Scared up.
You gotta look at it like that. What do I get from letting them know who they are and making them all? What do you think's gonna happen?
Well, I think, sorry to cut you here, I think one of the issues for them is that we have to understand that they really are our responsibility.
Which is why they know that.
No,
They don't want to go back to being a child again.
no. What I mean by that, the responsibility is that we created this problem. The problem is we're not taking responsibility for our part of it. We're not taking responsibility to get ourselves back. And what they've been doing is they've been feeding off of our inability to get together, because I was thinking about this morning. They can't move beyond this because it's us who has to move beyond. And we are not moving on.
Yeah.
So what's happened is they're feeding off of us in this place. But for them to get to the stars, we have to wake up to create that bridge. And
they can't get there on their own.
They
can't get there on their own.
They can't because they don't have it.
Yeah.
This is what I was thinking about. Some people won't remember this. Everyone remember the story about Medusa? And what Medusa reflected? Medusa was our empress, was our Moabite empress whose antenna were alive to that degree, able to transmit and receive, and was alive. That's what's going on with you. Your transceivers are waking up.
Are activated.
Activated, but you haven't been given. It's like being given. I was saying about this morning. It's like being given the keys to a car. And I don't know how.
And you don't know how to drive. Yeah. Might not even be that, because you're just sitting there, sitting there with all this power. Sitting there with all this power, can't do anything.
What you're saying, like, why they're treating us the way they're treating us is because, like you said, they can't move on without us, but we want to be stuck where we're at. So they do what they're doing to us because this is my opinion. This is my opinion. Because the ones that want to be black and do what they're doing, we're in dishonor, right? So they're going to continue doing what they do, continue whipping us till we realize, oh, we shouldn't be doing that. Child, right? Well, you're moving the child to the child learns,
I think
when we come into this place with no dualities out for us, we realize what he left for us 100 years ago plus.
I think one of those, sorry, Richard, I think one of the issues really is that we have different, I was reading some of this stuff about past life experience and stuff like that. That's what the prophet said. Those that were with me 2,000 years ago are with me here today. Those that were against me 2,000 years ago are against me today. And the deal being is that there are some of us that aren't about positive stuff, aren't about getting ahead. And those ones have sought after, and that's why we as a people, for the most part, we're very loving. That's why we're in the churches. That's why we're doing these things, because really we are those people.
Not naturally, yeah.
We are naturally those givers, and the thing, and that's a big part of the reason why we're in the state that we're in, because it's not in our genes like that to be evil and nasty and to be, that's in their genes.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that we got to get out of them. So they're naturally doing what they do.
And then, for example, let me tell you, an Arabic give me an example of a Jew. Arabic telling me about the Jew. The Arabic said the frog is like the Arabic, and the Jew is like the scorpion. He wants to cross the water. And he told him, give me a ride on your back to go across the water. He said, I'm not sure I want to carry you because you will sting me. He said, no, my family over there, I got to go across. Go on his back. Halfway through the water, he's stinging. He said, what happened? You told me you're not going to sting me. It's in my genes, it's in my blood, I can't help it.
Yeah.
I'm happy for the ride, but I can't help it.
Yeah.
Can't help it.
But the main part too, both of them drowned. Yeah.
There you go.
At the time when I said that, the frog knew. Yeah, he knew he was going to sing.
Both
Yeah,
of them.
but where I think that this goes beyond just that simply is the fact that we have a responsibility because we are part of the same family. And that and really what it is, there are as many Europeans probably against us. I would say that there are probably more Europeans for us than against us. They just don't know what to do on how to help us, as well as what the problem is, and this is what I realized too, they've gotten to a state, I mean, I think Todd was saying too, that if things wake up, then their daughter doesn't go to university. Right? Basically, a lot of the wealth that they have accumulated.
So you get it now.
Yeah,
You get what I'm
Stole
trying to say.
it.
right.
Stole it.
You understand what I'm trying to say. Look at it from the perspective, like, I'm gonna lose everything.
Yeah, no, that's their fear of it, but ultimately that has been set up. That has been set up by people that are making you think that there is a limited amount of stuff. This paper, this money is nothing. We know this. They can just keep printing it. But
That's not the asset. That's just.
no, but I'm saying that but we know this. Kudu and I, we drove to Montreal. There's so much land out there that each one of us could have 1,000 acres. They said that if they put the whole world's population, it would only go to Rhode Island. That's what they said. If you were to put the whole world's population, it would only fill up Rhode Island. So that's an illusion too. What this really is beyond that, from the perspective that it's about the enslavement of the energy.
Correct.
Yes.
It's nothing else. Anything else you're talking about is being distracted now. The problem is, that's what the Mennonites do. They go up, they build your home, and you're happy.
Yeah.
The problem is what they've done to you now. We were talking about this a while back too. But back in the day, you used to have a house, you had a living room, a kitchen, a dining room, or whatever. Now you go in, you got a dining room, living room, kitchen in one, and then you got another room. This has been to take away the aspects that allow people to grow and to breathe. That's why the prophet says a beggar nation can never attain its highest level of spirituality. The deal being, as long as we keep you in a state where you can't grow, we can feed off you. It has nothing else to do with anything else out there. Right? So we have to start changing those concepts with us. It's hard though, because it's been indoctrinated, but I always liken it to the working out. And the student will know this too. You know, you go out and start taking one jump, you take one free throw. At the end of it, you're taking 1,000, right? It's just about being able to get the work ethic and how to work the program properly, which is a big part of our problem, and the fact that they keep dangling things in front of us. You notice it's just as we get our act together, they put cocaine into the neighborhood. Just as they get our act together, they start making weed. I mean, you remember, we were smoking weed, and this was the stuff that would give us our whatever. Now remember they used to chase you down the street to get a joint. You go to jail to get a joint. Now the government's selling it. That stuff doesn't tell you what's going on. You're not gonna wake up. You're not gonna wake up.
Yeah.
But I always wonder, how do you find truth if you don't know that you're in the lie?
I'm not sure that you know.
Yeah.
That's why there's messengers and messages
Absolutely.
that you have to be.
No, but you have to be in the space. You have to be in that space of where you are.
I'll say this to you.
I'm from Jamaica, and if I'm in Jamaica and maybe that was Michael's Garden at that particular time, I wasn't at that time, so let's not talk about
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that because I've, for the last year or two, I'm like, okay, but we keep on saying that we need to do A, B, and C, but if you don't know that you're in a lie, or you don't have a clue that this is not the whole dynamics, or there's more to find, then how are you going to find something when you're not seeking it? Just like if you lost something, and it could be right there in your eye, in front of you, but you don't know because you're looking for that particular thing. Yes.
I'll answer that because we can see the state of our condition. And what is missing? Hey, I don't even have enough money to put food on my table. How come everyone else has food? So you start from that premise. So that's how that would be. But one of the concepts, and you bring up a beautiful point, because I've seen about that within my own family. If you've grown up somewhere and you've never been given love, how can you give love out?
Right.
So that's one of the concepts. The answer just came to me today, just right now, which is that that's what the books were there for. That's what the messengers were there for. It's all been there. If you see something, if you see, hey, how come I don't have a car? Well, how do I get a car? You gotta get a job, you gotta do these things. So it really works, from my perspective, it's all there. Plus the fact that you've got a spark of the creator in you. More times than not, the answer, you already know that there's an issue.
Yeah, sure.
It's just whether you want to admit to that and take responsibility for what you have to do once you know that.
Once you know.
Not everybody's strong enough
No.
to accept the truth.
Right.
It's easier to be dumb and in denial and just accept.
Is it really though?
It is true.
It is.
Is it easier though?
Yeah.
Ideally, it is. It's easier to
So-
just lay down and accept everything that's going on and own up to your dumbness and try to fix that.
That's come with the responsibility, and responsibility is one of the hardest things for us to be able to do. Because if I tell myself that I'm responsible for A, B, and C, or I've made certain decisions, and I've been, like you said, when you grow up in a certain lifestyle, you don't know it's wrong. Just like, some people are brought up in Christianity, I was not until when I got older. But once you're brought up in that conditioning, it's hard for you to step outside of that.
For example, sorry.
No, go ahead.
For example, all the young people now who accept homosexuality and all of that, because that's all they know. How many years have they're being conditioned, this is acceptable. Myself included, I don't want to know that rabbit hole. Just trying to be fair.
Well, I mean, this is what I would say. You're saying about, well, this is what I say then you probably are part of the food that is supposed to be fed on. So then take your place and get eaten. But you're here for another reason because you know something's up. Now the deal being, this is what I've seen at the gym. I always use the analogy at the gym. COVID happened, I put on 30 pounds, but I've gone through this process of getting up to 1,500 sit-ups and know that in the beginning when I was doing 10, I didn't ever think I would get to that other level. But once you've gone through, so what you have to do, Karis once said it best. Once you've done certain things, what did he say? He says that you have to continue to repeat the things that have made you successful. So if you got up every day and went to work, and going to work every day got you paid, then you got to take that concept and apply it to this. As I said, if it's too much, then that's your destiny. But I got to know that each one of us has a piece of the creator in us. And that piece was never meant to be here, or possibly maybe it was. And if that's the case, then so be it, then be happy with your lot. But to me, I know that what always gets me is when I see certain things. I'll see someone has a cottage to go up to. How come in this, how many people have a cottage here? Right. Now, I'm at work, I asked that. 90% of people put their hand up. That says something to me. Why do they have a place that they can go off into nature and to reflect? That wasn't done because they're working any harder than I am. That was done because a set of circumstances created this thing. So I'm also able to, what's the thing? Observation is also, because remember, I also said reflection is
The business of men.
the business of man. So we have to reflect on our position. I look at my mother, as I said, single mom. Why was that? I can blame her, but I can also blame my father. But I can also blame the situation that created that. Because he should have been out rolling around with all these other women, but she probably should have been a little more circumspect on who she picked. So there's that kind of stuff. So anyways, as I said, we all have a responsibility to ourselves for what we want to see within ourselves. And we're exactly where we want to be, all of us.
Yeah, that truth that you're saying how to find it if you don't know or what you have already is not the truth.
Yeah.
It's like it's the same thing like when you say many are called for your children, right? Now we say many are called if you have children. So we all have the ability to choose.
Yeah.
Right? So it's our decision whether we want to make that choice or not. But everybody's not supposed to be safe. Like I have that mentality too, like want to save the world, everybody should know and everybody should be free, but some of us are gonna have to fall to the wayside.
Exactly.
Right? Because all of us came from that place of not knowing.
Not knowing.
Yeah.
So we were able to wake up.
So what's
They
the
have
problem?
same ability.
Yeah.
So
Or
if
greater.
if they can't wake up and they're not waking up, because that just means maybe they're not supposed to.
We get so much assistance from Robert Jolly that brought this to us. And I like what he did too. Like for example, Will Lynch would say, so-called black people don't read, so they will never find out the truth. Now Robert Jolly come to tell us the truth, and one thing I know he did, he gave us small literature.
Yeah.
Like the book that you have there?
You see, like the book you got just now, sister, you will finish that in no time. But give you a bigger one. You read off a page, couple pages, you never touch it till maybe next week. But that one you will finish. So that was a good idea when you bring it, the literature small.
Yeah.
So you could get what you need to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's too big, and like I said,
Get
Will Lynch,
intimidated.
these people, they don't read.
Yeah.
The ones that can read do not read. And the ones that cannot read will never read. So they will never find out. Nobody try to do different.
Yeah,
And then I'm going to give them small literature. And they will find out.
There's a part of you too that, like you said, is an innate part of us that feels that truth, that knows it already.
Knows.
Once if you're sincerely searching, the universe is there.
They're gonna
like
show
this.
you,
Yeah.
The one wanting to give you everything you ask for. So you ask, you ask, and you shall receive.
Good point.
Right? So
Just to you, sister, you walked by here, we saw you.
Yeah.
We've been talking, then we saw you take a picture.
Right.
Then we saw you walk up.
Mhm.
Now you stepped in.
Right,
Just like Neil, you took your pill.
Right.
You laughed.
No, but I knew you guys were here. I was just trying to look for it and then take
Well,
it.
I'm agreeing, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, but I'm just saying, that's the process that we see is open to everyone.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And the other sister over there, how long now we talk? Maybe 5 years or more.
About 7 actually.
Good, and she's here now.
Yes.
She's here now.
7 years, I even higher.
She's here now.
that's how it goes.
She was late to them. I said, it's better too late than
They
never.
never. Straight
Better
up.
too late. And she's here
Just
now.
to show you, this is the other part. The prophet, you weren't here for this part. The prophet, the picture, if we have it, shows the prophet holding up the feminine energy who's asleep right now. The issue is the attack has always been against you. The attack from the very beginning was against the empresses, Medusa, the one who could change the universe. And so the deal being is that you are the one who all the weight of the world has been put down upon. The sister, the empress, the Moabite. And unfortunately, the men, because we are really just, machines.
The sons of
But I'm saying, in our inability to really come back to help our sisters, we've left you and abandoned you. And this is, but the attack has always been against you. So that road has always been tougher, as well as because you're the stargate that brings offspring in. The thing that is innately put into you is to create life and to bring energy. You are the force, and we are the concept of the intelligence which shapes that force. And so ultimately, more times than not, like my mother, she had me, I think, when I was 21, 22. You're still a child today. Those are children today. I was working at 16. At 20, you're still living back in mom's home. You know what I mean? You can look back to your own stories. What were you doing at 20? I'm sure you were working, more than likely, or had some other major responsibilities. And now what happens, you get put through the meat grinder, you're churned out on the other end, usually more times than not, with all kinds of other stuff that has happened in your life. And now finally you maybe are at a place where you can now start to live your life.
Figure some stuff out.
And figure some stuff out. But that's what it's always been. The problem has been within us to help you out. But we've been too busy trying to put something somewhere.
We've been kind of like spoon feeding and nurturing them too much too. So like they're become babies. Like when we were 15, 16, we were going to get our 365 and then our life. By the time I was 16, I was going to 16, 17 too.
Absolutely.
No, that's like far-fetched.
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
They call it Uber.
What they're advanced with is leaving home early and going to try to be on your own and find some shelter to live in for years until they make it, because there's a disconnect with them and their mom, or them and their dad.
Well, 9 times out of 10, it's because their families have been split and they don't have that healthy masculine energy in there to help to nurture them to the point to get out, I think, right? Which happens, remember back in the day?
But like my mom used to kick me out every day almost.
I do.
But I'm still with her. So it's like they think they're too grown. They don't want to take reprimand. They don't want to take discipline. They don't want to take tutelage.
Absolutely.
They don't want to have jurisdiction.
They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to.
So why were you getting kicked out every week? So
Because I'm a young teenage boy and I'm doing what young teenage boys do, and I was running the streets too. So obviously your mom is gonna get fed up at certain points and say, "Oh, leave the house. You can get out. You can leave if you want. If you don't like what I'm saying, you don't like my rules, then leave." That's regular.
But hold on, but let's be honest, just like me, because you didn't have your father there to really cut your tail to straighten you out. That's a lot of the times the same thing with me, because mom didn't have that power. That's how I saw
Mom
it.
used to give me record.
No, I know, but
No, it's different when it's mom, I enjoy mom beating. My father, I enjoy mom beating. Not my father. Not my father.
I grew up in Tobago for a while too with my grandfather and my grandmother as well.
Right.
And
I'm sure that discipline.
my grandfather never put a time on me once. My grandmother busted my ass every time they felt I did something wrong. My grandmother just talked to me hard or whatever. I mean, I probably was more afraid of that. Like, what, you never hit me? How come you haven't hit me? You just talked to me hard. That's more.
The same thing. The same fear you have and you never get.
What I'm saying, what my point is saying that don't underestimate the feminine energy, because that's the root of that energy.
I'm not
Who usually is the one carrying out the
No,
discipline.
I'm not underestimating.
I think you're right. What I was trying to qualify with that is the fact that the masculine energy in there also helped create that kind of, that triangle that needed to be there.
You wanna know
that
more?
wasn't there.
Well, no, yeah,
My
my
father-
father in a sense,
My
because
father,
when
no,
she
I'm
thinks
saying,
she can't
just
handle
look at you.
yeah, when she thinks she
Just
can't
look.
handle me,
You shut
She wanna
up.
call me.
Just look.
she
You
wanna
don't
call
have
me
to
and
touch
have
you.
to
Just
talk
look
to
at
me,
you.
right?
Just look. You don't even have to touch you.
Yeah,
Come come in and
definitely.
they look at you. Oh, damn.
My mom
Just look, you look like
That's what
you
we
don't
got.
want that.
I'm gonna take my dog.
yeah, just come here with you. And I was like,
Right, so this younger generation, they're not willing to stay home to take a lick. So like, what, you touch me? I'm calling
I'm
somebody.
calling
No,
somebody.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Well, I'm leaving right away.
Hold on, but
And
that's
now the system calls them and takes care
no,
of it right
that's,
away.
so no, that's different. But this is what I was gonna say. This is what I'm saying about how it's a 1 and 2 punch. Behind the scenes, as I said, I remember I got the belt. I remember one time me and my buddies jumped down into the subway tracks. We thought it was cool. One of the children went back, told the teacher, I got home. Mom said, "Hey, you wanna leave this world? Let me take you out." I still remember that meeting to this day. But the deal being that the system now has changed. Because I was thinking about this morning, that we're like a piece of clay that needs to be shaped. And in shaping that, there's gonna be pieces that get taken off, there's gonna be, or a piece of wood that you certainly built up, and you're just a lump of wood. And in doing what the colonizer has done has now made the child, who on a certain level could be the ancient spirit, needed to really have in the flesh form is really the baby. By not allowing him to then be formed, he then becomes this thing that is being bandied about. Whereas what discipline and your parents were doing was shaping and molding you to then go conquer.
The tools in the workshop.
Right. Which now they're telling you the child doesn't want that, or the child decides that he wants to be with a dog, or the child decides he wants to be a butterfly, everything's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, started, you can't go into the room, it's there, like.
Or you start yelling at him all of a sudden, whenever you go to school, you give the child a slap because he, decided to light matches under the thing, all of a sudden you're in jail because the child, the child didn't like that. But that's what they've done. They've gotten now into that process of molding that energy, and they've taken your ability away to parent.
The parent, yeah.
That's what's been happening.
Yeah.
Coupled with that, with the fact that you don't have the triangle together anymore,
Yeah.
which is the man and the woman, it's over.
Yeah.
Because at least back in the day, we had mom and granny. Granny was always there making the bake and the eggs. Granny was there.
Yeah.
And the hot cocoa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now that's not there. Granny's out at the club, mom's wherever, right? The bake, right?
But I don't think any of us knew what a healthy
Absolutely.
structure looked like.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's what I want, because even if you have mom and my kid's father had mom and dad there, but he can't teach his children.
Because he never got love, so how can you
Right,
get love?
exactly, yeah, so.
But at least they were at least a step further because both of those energies were there.
there.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, most children are learning by observation, not what you're telling them.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's the other part to it. But that's the part where, as I say, right now, I find it interesting. How come we don't have a ministry that goes around and goes and deals with all these families? Because it's not about healing the families,
No.
but they have a whole system set up for when the divorce happens
Yes.
to be in there to feed off of that.
Yeah.
Right,
So you can
yeah.
just see what I'm saying, that you guys already know this.
Mm.
But where you're right, it takes more responsibilities now. Pull your knickers up or your skirt up and do something about it, than to say, oh, this is where it's at.
Yeah.
And this is the problem.
You gotta step up, you can't be passive.
What is a healthy structure you consider in this day and time? What direction should we go in that? Changing your name over and all this other stuff, I haven't done that yet, but that would be to take out some of the Europeans' power.
What do you mean as far as reclaiming your nationality?
Right, yeah, to get back some of our power, so we'll be able to have the choice, if they come to say that they want to take our child, we don't have them in school, we'll have them in the, so they won't be, they can't say, oh, well, we're coming to take your child, children is gonna take your child, because they're no longer a part of the system, so.
Yeah, well, that's part of what Noah was saying earlier about know thyself.
Right, okay.
That once you know thyself, then you're gonna prioritize how you're gonna maneuver.
Right.
You're not just gonna, oh, we found out about that we're Mars, so I'm gonna throw the license away tomorrow because I found out I'm Mars. You know what I mean? You're not gonna, you're gonna prioritize.
Look towards the opposite of your forefathers and foremothers, like how they did it.
What?
It's
We
about-
don't
no,
need- but again,
no,
no, but we don't even get the church to push. Again, today, we don't learn much about that.
No,
That's
yeah.
one of the forefathers, we don't.
No,
We never know about that.
I'm sorry?
Circle 7, right?
Oh, no, I don't.
So you look at circle 7, there's instructions. It's a guidebook.
Oh, okay.
There's narrative instructions, there's instructions for children,
Oh,
there's
okay.
instructions for the men, the women.
So,
Okay, it's a guidebook, keep us steers back in mind what our ancestors, how they thought.
Oh, okay.
So if you analyze that book,
Mm-hmm.
it's give you a better perspective on how to see.
Like certain things will resonate with you, like the grandchief said, like how we could kind of fall in line too, is there's always a messenger sent, or somebody sent. So Prophet Noble Jari came, was sent to here for us in North America to help us get back to the state we're in and our natural being. And there's certain things that are template and there's guidelines left. So you could humble yourself, if you could humble yourself and say, you know what, let me take instruction, let me take to it. There's stuff there. But there's individuals might see that and say, who is this man? What makes him special? Or who said he's a prophet? Or why do I need to listen to his words and whatnot? But if you're seeking truth and you're sincere in it, like certain things are gonna resonate from a genuine perspective. So you, like Bob said, right? Who feels it knows? Who the cap fits, make them work. Right? So who would apply to? And when it resonates with you and it's something, it feels like it's of you, you embrace it. And you're gonna become it. Right? So there's leaders all over, from time immemorial, there's always been leaders. Became prophets, messengers, and whatnot for certain people or for everyone and for a certain time period. And the messages are all laid out. And it, trust me, once it sinks in and it's right, you're gonna see it. You're like, okay,
you already know.
That, I don't have to question that.
Yeah.
To a certain degree.
For example, we know of Marcus Garvey, Bob Marley, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Muhammad, name them, all powerful leaders that brought us stuff.
Farrakhan also.
Farrakhan, I cannot call up them. Let's stop there. Now, move on to the one that we never hear about. Noble Jari. Why we never hear about it? And we have a Christian name with a birth certificate, not knowing that we have rights to be born. Noble Jari is the only one that brings you your birthright to be born. Not somebody certify you, oh yeah, he's alive, give him this name and he's alive. No, your birthright. That's the only prophet that brings us that. And when you get that, now you know who you are. Your rights to be here. Not somebody certify you and give you whatever name they choose to give. Brand you the way they want to brand you. Your birthright.
Kind of like what you said, like you said, Malcolm X, our YouTube.
Yeah.
And they have to know the place.
There you go.
Johnson, right? Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Elijah Muhammad. But they don't wear faces.
Yeah. Why they don't wear it no more?
It's Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey's.
The first picture.
You know that Malcolm X is Marcus Garvey's nephew.
I don't even know if Marcus Garvey out in the prayer. I don't know.
His Marcus Garvey's niece is Malcolm X's.
His niece. That means his brother's child. Because I never know enough of his clothes. The only person I know about Marcus Garvey is one man in St. Anne, Coffee Rose. He passed now, but every year they have celebration, he's the only one that comes speak. Coffee Rose, I remember him. He grew up with Marcus Garvey, but I didn't know he had brothers who could have niece and whatever. But there's a lot of things we don't know about this. As we unite and share our pieces, then we get close. We put the pieces together.
Islam.
I never know Marcus Garvey. Noble Jolly visited him in prison. They don't teach us that in school. And I go to Marcus Garvey Secondary. I go to his school. Never teach me that.
School wasn't designed to really teach you.
You know that. So I want to emphasize on this. Things that keep us down.
That was one of the things that we were talking about earlier too. We all know something's wrong.
Yeah.
If you need to get the encyclopedia of all the things that are wrong, we can give you that.
Yeah.
But what, that's part of the process of keeping you distracted. What I would say, if you're looking for the next steps to take, is first of all, understand that this is the road less traveled, because you've seen that the road that everyone else takes.
Is not the road.
Say in your mind, I'm going to commit to this to a year. Say also in your mind that I'm going to try to read the things, and most importantly, I would say, I'm going to ask every question that I think I want to ask. I have no fear for everyone, the answer. Because of our mothers. And so know that ultimately we have that love for you, ultimate love and respect, but we're also going to be calling you on the fact that the condition that we're in is primarily because of some of the stuff that you guys have done. So you're going to have to also be steeled to the fact that you're going to have to look within yourself at some of your sort of stuff that you do. But through that, as I said, I'll use the gym analogy again, is that once you get through those 50, you're going to be this perfect, perfected entity. But there's also variations of that. You get to the 750 sit-ups a day, you'll be there. But anything's going to be better than this. I always use this analogy. Every time I go to the gym, no matter how I felt when I went there, I always feel better
After.
Are you saying I'm fat myself?
No,
I'm kidding.
She got you there. She got you there, didn't you? Yeah, she got you there for a second. She got you.
What's your appellation?
Payback right now.
The other thing I was going to say too, this is where we're at. The issue is we have our last 5 or 6 Noble Joy Elite days, they're up there. What I would say one of our issues is the commitment again. If we had everyone that has come through these doors and stayed, this thing would be over. The problem is that as they're tiptoeing through this and going through the working out process, a lot of them fall off. The prophet said, I'll lead you all the way up there to the water, and many of you are going to turn around because it's too difficult. So I would also then say, take it slow, but be committed to this, because this is one of the only true paths to getting yourself back and happy. We understand also that you guys have been the ones, the empresses have been the ones most far off, or have been sent the most far off, and have to understand that your path is going to be that much more difficult. Islam.
Islam. Any other comments, questions before we close out?
Yeah, I just want to make a, when we're saying it's easy to, we kind of had like a discrepancy, we're saying it's easy to do the bullshit or whatnot. It's physically and materially kind of more easy on certain levels at the beginning, right? So this journey is spiritually easy once you start doing it. It might get physically harder because we're on occupation, and depending on what type of your circumstance or the situation you're in, it's gonna get harder, right? Because you decide to now use their license and certain things. Now you have a problem traveling on the roadways, the gear conveys, getting stopped by the highwayman or whatnot. Now you have to be forced to take transit all the time, right? When you have a conveyance in now, you can't use it because it's gonna possibly cause you more complications, possibly imprisonment as well, because they're violating our rights and whatnot. So yeah, the journey physically could be a little harder at the beginning. But like what we're saying, once we're all on the same page, then everything becomes easy. Because now we're navigating together, we're moving together, so everybody's on the same type of frequency. It's not like the majority saying we're this, and then just a selective few who are saying that, and we look like the majority, so leading us with everything that the majority thinks and does, right? So it makes our battle harder, right? But yeah, like for perception-wise, the corporate way might even look easy too, or feel easy, but it's not. It's just like it's an illusion of looking. It looks like it's easy, but it's really not.
Really not.
Right?
And then I would say, just count, quick the count back, look at the state and affair of most of our people. How many of us have colleges? How many of us have houses? How many of us have work that pays us a decent wage? And the thing with the conveyance that he's talking about, 9 times out of 10, any problems that we're having in these conveyances because they see Asiatics in these conveyances, and they're coming after you to profile you, to extract finance from you. And that's the other part that we understand, that the attacks on us that you think is because we're black is not really because you're black, because they're the black ones. It's really because they're looking to hem you up.
Right?
Sorry.
No. Like I was just thinking about the church too, like how long it's been there forever. Like our people been going from time.
Absolutely.
Like God, I'm just thinking like what is the benefit of the church other than like Jesus is gonna save you, right? Like that's what they say, right? Like you just wash away your sins, you come here, you're gonna be redeemed, you already have a place in heaven, whatever. But what is the other kind of benefit of a church? Like what do they do? Like how they in the past 100 years alone? What benefit have they done to like change the condition of our people and make it better and uplift us? And our people are delved into that thing still.
Yeah.
Like
It's only because they think that their soul is going to be saved, and they're not going to go to hell. That's the only reason why they're doing it. It's about fear.
Right?
Fear is bringing them there every week, but they have not changed their mentality. They're still wicked.
But hold on, but also the church was never designed to help you.
No, definitely
So ultimately, the very
Right? But
place-
that's the idea that we have, that we're coming in there to get
But
help.
guess what? But that's been based on the fact that there is a God and God really is there for us.
Right? Exactly.
So they're using the pinpoint or the lake of truth to hide the lie. That is what it is, which is that they're not really giving you true religion or true God.
But like that's how deep the spell is that right now we can't look and
That's
say
why-
like
That's why
the church has not done nothing for us. We're still in the same position.
That's why we're attracted
It
to
was
it.
not only that. It was not-
Wait a minute, just give me 1 second. The church, the church.
Yeah.
You know where I get the name from? The Christian name and the surname? Where do I get it from? The church. That's the start of my life. What do you expect? What do you expect? If when I'm born, you take my real stuff and give me a Christian name and a surname, go on with your life. What's gonna happen? That's what's happening to these people.
Oh, the sorcery is real. It's crazy.
That's what happened from the beginning.
When you ask them that.
As much as fiat we give, one of the times we pray and doing all this, nothing's changing. I don't get it.
In
When are you gonna try to do
That's
something
what it
else?
is.
But in relation to your argument about the church,
Take money from it.
look at all that we've come to see, what the church is all about.
Yeah.
You know, all the hypocrisy, all the pedophilia,
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that, and people are
And we
still
still there.
diligently running to church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
diligently.
Sending out fiat to the collection. thing,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then what happens? Oh, they got upgraded. The church got upgraded, the pastor got some stuff, but like, what is this doing? Like, are we feeding everybody? Are we sending it like even they're pretending like paper trail of us using some of this fiat to send it to somebody in need or something like.
They don't even have to do that.
That's what I'm saying.
So, but that has not helped us, even like, if we're gonna get into trouble with the law, they're not there for that, if our rent is not, can't get paid, none of that, and you've been there for 10 years, 20 years, none of that thing is.
The only time we would kind of see the church assisting people or helping people is in movies.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, movies.
But hold on,
Like,
but you
you could run to
remember
the
talking
church.
to best. Where's the vampire always hiding? The vampire's always hiding in the church, right? Always hiding in the bowels of the church, right? Always up in the bells.
In one of the coffins there.
But I'll tell you the story. This is what the man, because I was telling you about the church yesterday. He was telling me, as a young boy, he was involved in a Roman Catholic church, and he said that whenever he would go to the church, he was a young boy, they would always tell him to go sit on the priest's lap. And he'd go sit on the priest's lap, and he'd say, "You always feel this heart thing." No, remember, we're laughing here. See, we laugh, but we're laughing from a perspective of that this is too uncomfortable to really feel. As a young man, you'd be told to go sit on the priest's lap, and you feel something hard below him, and then when you get off, you look, and it would look like the man had wet himself.
Yeah.
But this is what I'm trying to show
Faster,
you, and
man.
when we see that this is what it is across the board, then we ask ourselves what it is, but what's happened is they've gotten ahead of the curve and realized that all of us as Asiatics are connected to God. But we're all connected with God, but if what we think God is going into this building here, we'll have some guy tell us what God is, then we've lost our way. When really we are all gods that just need to be woken up to that. And then we fulfill our God potential.
God-given duties are.
And potential, because we're all here with special pieces of God to help make this better.
Make this better.
So anyways, I think on that,
Make your peace. Yeah. Islam.
We have smoothies if anyone wants. So afterwards, we can talk about that, but Cujo, you wanna?
Yeah, let's get closed out. Peace and love to all the Moors. We'll just close out. Face the east. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe.
Allah, the Father of the universe.
Father of love.
Father of love.
Truth. Peace. Freedom.
Freedom.
And justice.
And justice.
Allah is my protector.
Allah is my protector.
My guide.
My
And my salvation.
And my salvation.
By night.
By night.
By day. Holy prophet.
Holy prophet.
Noble Father. Islam. Ashir. Islam was.
Oh yeah, the smoothies are $5. Well, I mean, I didn't want to put that out. No, I just.